All right. We're down to 3 minutes, counselors. All right. This call? You good? I'm calling the January 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Roswell City Council to order. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Oropesa?
Here.
Counselor Kinnard?
Here.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
Counselor Brilbeck is absent. Counselor Best?
Here.
Counselor Foster?
Present.
Counselor Sanchez? Counselor Lopez?
Present.
Counselor Stubbs?
Here.
Counselor Perry?
Here.
Mayor Kintai?
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask everyone to please rise while Councilor Lopez leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance and Councilor Foster does the invocation. Councilor Lopez, you have the floor.
Please bow. Father God, thank you for all the blessings you've bestowed upon this nation and all the citizens of New Mexico and the citizens of Roswell. Be with us while our nation needs healing from physically and mentally, and be with all the medical staff that's working as hard as they can. Just help us out. I know you can. Also be with us tonight as we make decisions that are important to the city of Roswell and to our citizens. In your son's name, amen.
Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda to include the minutes from the November 18th and also the December 9th and also the December 28th special council meeting. to also include all other consent items, removing number 4, Resolution 21-81, which is to consider the resolution to adopt and update Chaves County Hazard Mitigation Plan. A counselor has requested that be put on regular agenda, so that will come as first item under new business, regular items, and also the removal of number 10 from the agenda completely, which is Resolution 21-82, which would be implementing the update of site and drainage plan review process for all incoming residential property developments within the city of Roswell.
I have a motion by Counselor Perry when he activates the motion button there, and a second by Counselor Best to approve the agenda with item number 4 coming off of consent and item number 10 being removed completely from the agenda. Is there any debate or discussion on the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the agenda as presented. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none. Seeing Counselor Sanchez, if you can activate your vote button.
Oh. There you go.
All right. And it's 9-0. And item number 2, I don't have any announcements tonight. So we'll go right into Mr. Nebb.
Enjoyable evening so far.
That it is. Keep it going, Mr. Nebb.
All right, Mr. Mayor, City Council, it gives me pleasure to provide a mid-year financial review, and we walk through one of the biggest things that we do every year, and that will be coming up here in April to start talking about our budget for this upcoming fiscal year. So a lot of things have been happening in the city. So between myself, Mr. Fuentes, and Ms. Davies, we're going to take you on a walk through the mid-year information. We're going to remind you of some of the good work that we have done that has assisted the budget, and a lot of different pieces in that. So I think this is a 3-hour conversation. That's why Mr. Mayor has allowed me this time. Kidding, okay.
Call the question.
All right. Let's start with a demographic snapshot. And the census just came out for 2020. Roswell went up in population, not a lot, but it went up in population from 10 years ago. That's a good sign. I think the challenge we have is that with Chaves County going down, that meant there was a bigger loss within our region for that, but some of them moved into town because our numbers are part of Chaves County's numbers. But those are the numbers there based upon the census population. The median home value, the best I could do, because this information does not come from the census, it comes from other information out there that gets added to the census information about our economy and such. So 2013, the median home value was $96,800. Today, that same home is $105,000.
Why don't you bring it a little closer?
I will.
Yeah. You do a good job projecting.
I do project, so.
But
this will be a little bit better. All right. So the median home values have went up. That's a good sign for property values. That's a good sign for people trying to move the house. The median household income from 2013 was $39,989. In 2020, it was $43,372. So we see an increase in the median household income, which is a good sign. I will say, though, that 2020 actually dropped from 2019. 2019 was actually higher with our household income, but when we came into the census, we see that number lower a little bit. So, but it's a good, I think in my mind, it's a good trend if you go back 7 years and coming forward. We're going to get into this financial review, fiscal year 2021, 2022, budgeted revenue and expenses. I don't want to confuse anybody there because it is a balanced budget. We are required by law to have a balanced budget, revenue and expenses. But on this chart, we show 113 million in revenue and 128 million in expenses. Part of that difference is because until we receive grant money, we can't put it into the revenue numbers. So we do budget it because we expect that grant revenue to come in, and then that'll raise our revenue for that as we move through the year. But that's why it looks different on the screen. It is a balanced budget based upon what we have. And by the end of the year, if the revenue does not show up, then of course we'll reduce our expenses to balance back out that budget. With that, I'm going to allow, I think, Mr. Fuentes to come up and take us through the next few slides.
Thank you, Joe. Mayor and Council, so I will just be briefly covering some of the slides. What you see here are the major revenue categories for all of our significant funds. We're looking at general fund, the lodger's tax, the water, wastewater fund, the solid waste, and the airport. These are the major funds that operate a lot of our activities. Within the general fund, what I will be highlighting is what I normally report on the monthly basis to the Finance Committee in regards to the gross receipts tax. Again, gross receipts tax represents a major source of revenue for the general fund. It represents over 70% of our revenue stream, so it is critical and important that we track it on a monthly basis, because this will determine how we're doing, and as well as how we're going to project and move into the next fiscal year when we start planning for the budget. So as you can see here, for December of 2021, we have actually collected for that month gross receipts of $3.3 million. We anticipated a budget based on prior year history of $2.7 million, and so you can see that we are up by 568,412 for the month. What you see on the graph, you see the bar both representing the fiscal year 20 on the light green, and then the darker blue is fiscal year 21, what was the budget. And of course you see the line, that is the actual collections of the GRT. Every month we have been trending higher than what we are projecting, so that is a good trend in the coming months. When you look at the
Mr. Fuentes?
Yes.
You might want to touch about the September of 20 and the November of 20. The fact that those are so large, and the explanation which we got from the state tax and rev as to why they were so large.
And that is correct. And I think that is outside of the norm from prior years, because that was a correction from taxation and revenue last year. And I think every year, you know, we kind of make sure that that, of course, represents outside of the norm. But that was what was reported to us. It was a correction from one of the retailers in town. Obviously, sometimes there might be mistakes made where they report their GRT somewhere else, and then they come back to an audit and they end up correcting their distribution. So that was a gain for us. Going into the fiscal year 22 collections for year to date, for the first 6 months, as you can see, we have actually collected $19.4 million, and we anticipated in the budget for this period to have collected 17.6. So we are up $1.7 million in GRT. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is starting in September, we started receiving as well the internet tax. So that's also helping us in contributing to trending higher than what our projected budget has been. So we're hopeful that in the next coming months we're going to continue to see that trend, and it will end the fiscal year with GRT being higher than anticipated. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I will turn it over to Janie Davis.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm going to go through the funds. How's that? Better. Okay. I'm going to go through the funds, and I'm going to show you some charts and some graphs. The general fund contains all the departments that are not required to be in another fund. All of the departments that are in the general fund normally require some kind of tax revenue to supplement the income to cover it. That is like fire, police, parks, library. These numbers come from the DFA report. It's the Department of Finance and Administration report that we prepare quarterly. You all see this quarterly. What it shows is the cash and investment amounts, the revenue that includes the transfers and any adjustments, expenses, and then an ending cash balance. This is the same data that's been put into a slide. I broke out the report into the 4 categories. The data and graph represent fiscal year 19, 20, and 21 actuals, along with 22 actuals through November, and the fiscal year 22 budget. The city is financially sound. The fiscal year 22 November actuals for cash and investments are in line with budget and are holding from the fiscal year 21 ending cash balance. We are on track with revenue and expenses for November actuals, and ending cash balance is up from budget. Go back one. The budget includes transfers of $13.8 million. $8 million is going to roads, $3 million goes to capital projects, $1.4 million to cover the recreation bond debt service, and transfers of $342,000, $367,000, $166,000 for the museum, zoo, and golf as supplemental revenue. The November actuals and budget also support the 3/12 reserves that you all approved in the budget of $9.6 million. DFA only requires that we set aside 1/12, so through November that 1/12 would be $1.4 million, and the actual based on budget numbers is $3.4 million. So we're doing very well cash-wise. The enterprise funds are the airport, and for this purpose I've included water, sewer, and sanitation together. The airport, the chart information is the same. It consists of fiscal year 19 through 21 actuals, 22 actuals through November, and then the 22 budget. The airport has $13.8 million tied to capital projects that are budgeted in revenue and expenses, and part of that will carry over into the fiscal year 23 budget. The airport is financially sound too. There is very little fluctuation between the beginning cash balance and the ending cash balance over the entire 4-year period. For water, sewer, and sanitation, they've been combined. In fiscal year 19, the funds started $18.4 million in capital projects. In 20, they had $16.7 million budgeted. In 21, they had $9.3 million. And in 22, we have water with $5.1 million, wastewater treatment plant with $6.8 million, and landfill with $4.2 million. That's a total for this fiscal year of $16.1 million. The special revenues are all the other revenues outside of our major categories. And it includes in like the fire protection, recreation, capital improvements, the community loan or development loan, and the restricted donations. This chart shows that the information is the actuals for the number of years. The cash, the beginning cash for fiscal year 19 included $17.2 million for the recreation center, so it's a little bit out of whack, but we know why. The November actuals And the fiscal year 22 budget also include the American Rescue Plan money. The 19 beginning cash balance has the 17 million in it. For long-term debt, the long-term debt includes bonds payable, notes payable, the landfill closure and post-closure workers' compensation liability, and compensated absences. The current long-term debt is 57.6 million, which is down 7.9 million from the 21 actuals. And based on the current debt for fiscal year 21 from the audited financial statements, the city has additional debt capacity of $15 million and still remain within a budget or a debt ratio of 2% or higher, which is general practice in calculating a good debt ratio and staying financially sound. And because this is based on our fiscal year 21 audit, I would like to remind council and the public that if they're interested in the city's financial statements, those are on the state auditor's website, and it's at saonm.org. And on the main screen, it'll ask you, you can click on a link that you can search for any governmental entity in New Mexico and pull up those audited financial statements. And I'll turn it back over to Joe.
I have Councilor Pace. Councilor, do you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that I understood the number on debt capacity. Did you say 15 million?
Yes, we could, above the 57 million, we could do 15 more million in debt and still stay within the 2% debt ratio.
Okay, so it's come down from a year ago. I think a year ago we were at 29, or maybe 2 years ago when we were talking about the $35 million bond.
Yeah, if you look at the slide, every year, of course, as we pay our debt service off, you can see that trend going down because we're not doing any long-term borrowing anymore. So every year that we pay a little bit more of that debt off, we gain additional capacity on the other side.
Well, it would seem to me that if we haven't really borrowed any further money, that the debt capacity would have been going up instead of going down.
Okay, I see what you're saying there. It really depends on how that debt capacity is done. Is this the general fund's debt capacity? This is the total all. So
And I think part of the difference is that this includes the workers' comp and the compensated absences, because those are long-term debt for us. I think if NMFA or somebody were to calculate our debt, they probably would take those out. And if those come out, it'd add about another 7 million
Another
in there. 7 million?
7 million, so bring it up to about 22.
Yeah.
I think, Councilor, what's different is that the bond issue, which the voters rejected, would have increased revenue, and that would have increased the debt capacity to cover the debt for the public safety complex.
Well,
in
that may be
that
so.
conversation, that's correct.
I mean, I didn't understand it that way because at that time we were just looking at that capacity at 29 point something million dollars.
And I'm not sure what those numbers were. I think that's part of it as well, is that with the public safety complex question that was asked of the voters, is that we were asking to allow for more capacity than what we're currently allowed by statutory. As that vote did not go through, we have our regular capacity within there, and I would say that Ms. Davies covered within this calculation. We have workers' comp, we have these other funds that count, that we have no control over, but they count against our debt service.
I just want to make sure that I understood it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. This last slide here, and then we'll get into some other interesting information. This is our fiscal year 2022 budget and how it's broken down. And so everybody that's listening, The year that the budget ends in is what the fiscal year is. So we did this budget back in 2021 before July, and it runs until June of 2022. That's why it's called the fiscal year 22 budget. So in April, we'll be doing the fiscal year 23 budget. So just move a year forward, it's where it ends at. But within here, we have $43.8 million in personnel costs, $38.2 million in operating, and then $46.1 million in capital. That's our budget for this year. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I do want to say thank you for all of the assistance that you have had in doing our budget and doing all of our processes, because not every day was a sunny day. 4.5, I've been here for 4.5 years. When I got here, this was a sign that was out there. We were in a constant argument with our staff, the unions, as far as having livable wages and having a process there. It's not always been nice and fun and shiny, but I want to say thank you for the work that you have done, because we've turned the corner on this thing, and I'll explain why in a second here. But when we were putting together budgets prior to 2017, our priorities is that we would put all the money on the table, and we would say, we competed personnel salaries against capital projects. We would compete against operating expenses. I operate a little bit differently within the city administration, and I prioritize in a function type structure. We changed that, and you agreed with me. We changed that to say, first thing that I budget for are the salaries and benefits of our people. Once we have that in place, we look at the operating expenses, and then we look at the capital projects. That's the process how we walk through this, and we try to find a way to work that. I'll tell you that there is no sign like that within the city of Roswell now. There is a lot of political signs, vote for me. I'm just saying. All right. But we were competing against all of that, and so the city doesn't have unlimited revenue. We have to work within a budget. We have to work within a prioritization, and when the money is all allocated out, we have to stop. Turn the page, 4.5 years later, we've tripled the earning capacity of every city position over the course of their career. When I got here 4.5 years ago, we had a grade and step scale of 8 steps. Almost half of our staff were up at the capacity of step 8, and they were stuck there. And we always had a conversation about how to adjust that structure. From the beginning wage, the minimum wage, and then to the maximum wage in a 8-step process, there's only a 23% differential. So you start at $10 an hour. By the time you hit 8 steps, you're $10 and, 23% more. So it's $12, $13 out. And that's it. And then the only thing that can change from there is whether or not we did a cost of living adjustment or any kind of step increases from that point. Our current grade and step scale, it is all ranked on the grades. It is ranked upon the responsibility of the position from the city manager all the way down to the library page. We have no employees that are below minimum wage. We bring them all up to the minimum wage, and it's increasing every year, so our scale is changing with what the lowest grade is. In the steps, we have a minimum step, and that is the starting salary for a position at a certain experience level. And then we have a step 20, that is we would assume that is the maximum that we would pay for any position. And because once you hit the max, then we have to go and look and see if we can do the business differently. So there's a minimum salary and a maximum salary. Everybody moves along that scale, and it becomes, you get placed on the scale grade-wise based upon your responsibility, step-wise based upon your experience level, your skill sets, and your education. And we try to lay people on the scale that way. And then they move across the scale. Each grade is 2% up and down from one other grade, and the steps are 2% across. When you hit the maximum salary, like I said, then you're at the top of the capacity, and that is the most we will ever spend for any position as we move through there. This changed our world. We are now seeing more lateral transfers and returning personnel into our public safety departments. What that means is that we can take somebody that is already fully certified, get them trained in our systems, and get them on the street faster in order to protect our people. Our salaries are now competitive within the state of New Mexico. We're not the highest paying city out there. I think we still got one of our sister cities south of us that actually has that distinction. But they're in that oil and gas, they're a boom or bust city. And so they have to pull back on their services and everything. So our strategy with our salaries has been slow and steady. And I remember Councilor Henderson, when he asked me one year, I think it was the second year we were doing this, is it sustainable? I can tell you that it's sustainable. We've done it very well. We manage 655 positions, 150 temporary positions, and 10 interns annually. We have a $43,786,802 personnel budget. That's salaries and benefits within that structure. So thank you for doing the classification compensation plan. It has changed the conversation we have with the unions. It has changed the conversations we have with all of our people. I believe that we are maintaining high quality employees. And that is what we were trying to do, was hold on to them, the individuals, for that. So each budget cycle, as we go into the budget cycle, the city manager is tasked with the requirement to build the budget that you can then consider. I start with personnel, salaries, and benefits. Anything that is happening coming out of the state, anything that's happening within the feds, we build that all in there. We start with our expenses for salaries and benefits. We talk about whether or not we can make it fit. We go into the operational needs, and then we do the projects. And our whole goal is to keep high quality employees. They live here with us. They're our family, they're our neighbors, they're our people, and they're very important to us for that reason. Just some of the final points of the importance of this, because you saw the sign at the beginning. This was our unions being upset because they didn't think the council cared. I want to draw your attention to the comment from the UWUA, that's our blue collar national representative that helped negotiate and everything else. And his statements is that this is the first year that we didn't have to have a big fight about the importance of employees. So I want to make sure that you see that. They are one of the city assets that appreciate with time. I believe that firmly with all my heart. You can train them a little bit better. You can move them in there. Equipment wears out, infrastructure wears out, but employees, they increase in value as you go through. Whether the employee is in one of the three unions or not, they remain first and foremost an employee of the city. And our union stewards, our city staff, we treat it as that. We treat everybody as important as our people. And then that's our success. And we want them to be able to take care of their families, because they actually impact the economy just the same way as well too. They put money out there that, over 76% of their salary gets put back into the economy for them to make a living within their process. And that's on average, but that's what happens, is that money rolls through. They go and buy groceries, they go and buy restaurants, they go and do that. So that's a very important thing. Our biggest challenge today, 655 positions, we are sitting around 90 positions open. Our biggest challenge is not our pay, our biggest challenge is finding people that can work. And that's our biggest challenge for where we're at with that on the employees. Let me just end with just some of the points that were raised in this conversation. I just want to point some of the stuff out. Along with this, and I know that we have trolls on social media that talk about how bad it is or what is happening. Along with taking care of our employees the way we have with this classification compensation plan, we increase the amount of money that we are holding on to for a rainy day in our general fund reserves. For 4 years, this council tried to bring that number up and could not find a way. Last year we got there. We increased from 1 month, which is what the requirement of the state is, and now we are carrying 3 months. We are ready for any kind of emergency that we may have there. Road funding is at its highest level in decades. Look back through, we've had some fluctuations through the last 4.5 years, but this year over 12 million going to that budget for road work has happened this year, and we believe that's going to be sustainable as well. Air Center activity. In the budget, we have 17 million of budgeted capital in the budget. Some of that money is grant money. A lot of that money takes care of the taxiways and everything else. But our investment back in the Air Center is generating approximately $40 million of public-private investment at the Air Center. I'll have information for you coming forward. There may be a need for a special session. We're getting ready to break ground on the Ascent hangar, the big, large hangar for that work. That's coming very, very quickly here. And so that's a $16 million project on its own. What our financial future looks like. We were very blessed, very successful in receiving $5.5 million of CARES Act funding. Some of the cities in New Mexico did not do as well. We asked for more, we got half. That went to help pay our salaries for public safety employees, because during the early days of COVID, we had to have all of our people out there assisting in the best way possible. Our GRT continues to climb. That is something that was, it's kind of an anomaly to me, because we anticipated in last year's budget, we cut 31 million out of the budget. We cut 101 jobs. This year, we put back 155 jobs, and we're still less than what we were 2 years ago in our budget. And we're putting all this money out there. It's an anomaly, but our gross receipts tax keeps going up, and we're at 7.1% over last year. Mr. Fuentes talked about the internet sales recapture. We began receiving those funds in September 2021. We estimate about 500,000 to 800,000 annually is what we're receiving. It's very difficult to pull that information, glean that information out of the information the state will allow us to have. But that was one of our early estimates as to what we think we're receiving. Along with that, we received a one-time settlement of $2 million from TRD in decade-long overcharges. Again, just like we talked about with the gross receipts tax, having that anomaly in September. This was some corrective work that had been worked on. We worked with it. We worked with a lot of other cities on this. TRD. Actually, we found a balance within this thing and found a good settlement that worked for everybody, and this is our portion within that. Over $8 million in federal and state funding for the Air Center today, and we've had 2 or 3 tranches of $1 million going in from the federal government. With Chavez County, we got $5 million of those legislative dollars last year in order to be spent out there. So we're seeing money coming into that Air Center that we're going to be able to invest and fix a few more things. We have half of this, 11.7 million of the American Rescue funding. Tonight you're going to have one item on your plate to start tackling that. Spring River Zoo is asking for some support through those funds in order to start some of the work that we have to do to bring some things up to date and to move forward. So as you can tell, I did not add up this whole page. I figured everybody that wants to do that can do that, but we're blessed. We're in very good shape, and it's looking very, very good. I just want to leave you with a little bit of a vision of the future, because we don't sit very long. It's like when it's really interesting, and you guys will see that if you haven't went through it yet. Once we get the budget done, because we approved the budget in July, the final budget in July, after we've already started the budget, but don't get me started on that one. But we approved the budget in July. By the next day, we're working on the next year's budget. We're trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do. This is something that constantly we work on and as we go. These future services, The Community Development Office, new consolidated location in the Sun West building. The first floor, they're remodeling that. We're working on, and that's nice to have a nice space that everybody is working in so that there's a one-stop shop. What I really think that Mr. Mavers and his whole crew are doing is a simplified process of the rules, the procedures, and the permitting of how you have to get your work done. So between getting them into one room and saying, this is what I want to do in the city of Roswell, we're making it a lot more simple as to what do we need in order to get that work going. Convention Center, we are excited about the future of the Convention Center. We have a staff that's phenomenal. I believe that we still have a few open dates on this front side, but you hit March, and I think every weekend's taken up already. And you keep going out, and we're seeing a lot more activity. Our sales staff is doing a fantastic job with that. Keep in mind that the Convention Center, our focus is on new dollars. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because as we talk about the fees for the zoo or the fees for the museum, when half the people that are using our services don't live here, I want their money. I want their money to go into our economy. And so if they can stay in our hotels, eat at our restaurants, utilize our services, leave your money here, and then go on home, and then I get to put that money to work for our residents, our citizens. And so our focus here at the Convention Center is to try to get as much outside of our region business that we can bring in here, and I think they're doing very well with that. Cielo Grande Development, we were successful in pulling that out from underneath FAA requirements. And so now we're getting ready to put together the housing development, commercial development plans. We are also working on recreational improvements out there. We've done a groundbreaking for the all-inclusive park. That's an investment from the legislators. I can thank Representative Nybert and Governor Grisham for the funding that they put into this all-inclusive park, and all of our stakeholders and partners. That was a good thing. We're now working on sports field development. We have a plan with that as well too. We're looking at additional baseball fields. We're looking at some additional space out there within the Cielo Grande area for some additional property so that we can keep up with the kids that we have in all those programs. Mentioned the American Rescue Plan. I won't go into that much other than the conversations that the City Council has been having is to make sure that part of that $11.7 million go into business assistance, finding a way to help all of our little mom and pops, all of our businesses bounce back out of this COVID. And I think we're doing fairly well, other than we need to start getting that money out to them. The utility assistance is another one. In February, we'll be bringing you, I intend to do a presentation in February. I was going to tell you at the end of the meeting, but I'll tell you now. I have a utility billing presentation for the next meeting. In that, we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with utility assistance and all of that, because anybody impacted by COVID, we can assist them with our dollars or the state dollars in order to bring them current with their billing. That way they don't have a negative impact to them. And then, of course, a lot of capital improvements for various services to try to bring some of this stuff up while it's there. We will continue to work closely with Chavez County. It's a fallacy. Anybody that says differently, we do work with them. They have a different mission. They have a different goal than us, but we work together just like we work together with RISD, just like we work together with ENMUR, just like we work together with NMMI. We work together with anybody to improve the people's lives, our people's lives within the city of Roswell. I want to thank you, Mayor, Council, for giving us the opportunity to share with you the financial mid-year snapshot. And I can answer any questions, or we can move on through the agenda.
I have Councilor Best and Councilor Oropesa. Councilor Best, you have the floor.
Okay, so my one question is, we've kind of been ripped for not handling the COVID correctly through social media with our employees. Can you explain how you're out of the thinking box and the staff out of the thinking box, and how we sat with all of our employees? We're always used to doing the same thing, but now we've started interchanging so we can do stuff, and we didn't have to get rid of any employees and no one was kicked out or fired or so
Certainly.
forth? Thank you.
And then I would ask, because I have not seen those posts out there, I'm taking a hiatus for my own personal health. But I guess my question is that I'm not sure of the context of that question. When COVID hit, there was a lot of conversation. We had to close down services. We had to close down a lot of things. The only people that were allowed to work in the city of Roswell, for the city of Roswell, were essential services. First thing we did was made everything that we do essential. We did close down some buildings. We closed down the museum. We closed down, some of the properties because everything was moving a little bit differently. We moved those employees into other jobs. At that point in time, as we were putting together the budget, we were worried that the trend and the conversation that we were seeing from our partners like Excel Energy, like some of the other oil and gas, all these businesses out there, the speculation was we would see a 25% drop in our gross receipts tax because we actually went out and said business could not operate, and so business was closed. So we pulled back really hard on our budget for that. In order to have those 101 jobs removed from the budget, 60 of them were open positions. We just closed those positions because we reassigned everybody into essential services. We had no idea how long that would go. 46 people, we offered voluntary severance with the city, whether it be early retirement or it be just severing employment with the city. We offered every employee that took the severance from the city 3 months' salary in order to leave. Retirement, we gave everybody 1 more year of para, which is allowed by statute as well too, and we allowed people to retire a little bit early because that changed that mix. These 101 jobs, we spent $800,000, approximately $800,000 to allow these voluntary severances to go. We saved $2.5 million in that expense. It was worth it to allow them to go that way. We did not let anybody leave that did not want to leave. We kept them here, and we just moved them into essential work, and we built that way. I think that was the history of that. As you go on through with that, we have worked very closely with that. There were cities, there were municipalities, I believe the state. Everybody was having the conversation. There were not too many people that gave raises to the employees. We gave raises. We did a cost of living adjustment, and we gave everybody that was remaining their step increase. My thing was that you don't want to throw fuel in the fire, cut back so hard, and then punish the people that you're hoping are going to help pull you out of this in that way. Every time somebody laid off somebody in the city, our economy was adjusted because they couldn't take care of their family. Early on, we froze all of the utility bills. We shut nobody off, and we're still not shutting anybody off for non-payment of the utility bills. We're working on trying to find that program and find that process up there. So that's a little bigger than the employees, but I'm not sure what the context of those kind of posts are in how we were managing our people. We leaned heavily upon them, and they helped pull us out of this the way they had to. The reassignments, again, we do voluntary reassignments about every half a year. We'll go out and help another department catch up. So we pull everybody together and we go out there. We're a team. We're a group of people together. We may not always see eye to eye. We may not agree with everything, but we know what our purpose is, and that's to take care of the city of Roswell. So I don't know what the context is. It could be for a lot of different reasons. It could be because we're in that season. I don't know. My thing is that I would challenge anybody to get the information and find out how we worked with our people. Once we knew that our budget was good, we put 155 jobs back. Now the difference was that they weren't We didn't overload a department that may or may not have had too many employees. We shuffled them around and provided for each one of those departments a little bit differently. We provided more, by providing more jobs, we've provided the ability for the economy to pick up as well. Does that help answer that question?
It does, and I also wanted to say kudos to the fire department and police department for all the work they did during COVID, and also that I have noticed, and of course I drive around a lot and check out stuff a lot, we have a lot more younger officers, and those younger officers actually were raised and grew up in Roswell, so in turn, they're going to care more about Roswell. Same with our fire department, and I'm very proud of that. So I just want to get that.
We're excited about that too. You know, the challenge you have with this part of the country and everything, we can hire everybody on their technical skills, but if they can't find the heartbeat of the community, they won't last. They won't stay. They don't fit. By shifting our whole model, and the PD and the fire department have done an excellent job of this. We're out there looking for those generational individuals. We're looking at bringing the employees back that have escaped us at some point in time in the past, and we're really excited because we actually now have a very diverse group. We do have people that are coming in from the outside that want to be here. Those are our adopted brothers and sisters, right? They're adopted. They've come to us. What we try to do is build an environment that they can excel in, and that's part of the compensation plan. That's part of the process that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Councilor Oropesa, and that exhausts my list. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go back to the road fund that you indicated that we have put over $12 million. Is it correct to say that the $12 million include not just the roads, it also includes sidewalks as well?
Yes, sir. I would say that is correct. Everything within the right-of-way is a part of that. So, yeah, from in a normal street, it's the outside of the sidewalk to the outside of the sidewalk. It includes the curb and gutter. It includes the sidewalks. It includes the asphalt area.
The study that was made a couple of years ago that suggested $16 million.
Yes, sir.
That did not include sidewalks.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So can you break down how much of the $12 million is being spent for actual streets and how much is being spent for actual sidewalks?
I don't have those numbers there, but I can give you a spitball range
Okay.
within there because we have not focused a lot on sidewalks until this year's budget. And this year's budget, we actually put in as a part of that $12,250,000 to go to sidewalk replacement. So that's the difference. All the other money goes into the street work. Now, keep in mind also, and I'll lead through this a little bit farther. There's $7 million of that covers salaries of the street department as well too, because the whole idea about street maintenance is that you want to stop the street from failing, and the thing that makes it fail is water getting into the surface and then the freeze thaw, and then that breaks up the asphalt. What our crews do is they go out there and they seam seal. So they will crack seal the asphalt. They will go out and fix the potholes because potholes enlarge if you don't fix them. And so there's $7 million that you could consider everyday maintenance of the streets. The remainder of this money is all outside of the $250 for the sidewalks is the projects that we are doing for mill and fill, replacement of the bigger project of pulling it all the way out. We don't do a lot of that, but we do mill and fill and we do the hot recycle right now. And so, yeah.
Well, you answered the other question that
You're
I had.
welcome.
The other one is do you have a report that can be given to us concerning how many employees have been infected with COVID?
Yes. I believe HR, we do track that because we are required to provide that information to the state as to any time one of our employees are infected with COVID. I will say I know of nobody that has actually been infected by working with the city of Roswell. Most of what happens is that they go to Walmart, grocery stores, everything else, and so they're out in the public as well too. I have nobody that's just coming to work and then going home. So
Well, where I'm going with that is, the COVID money, wouldn't those individuals be able to use that money to cover their salaries if indeed they don't have sick leave, annual leave, or any other kind of leave?
if the city council chooses to do that, yes, it can. That money can be used for that. For the first year and a half, and we actually extended it, we did what's called a COVID 80. So early in COVID, and we ran it actually longer than a year, we provided any employee that became infected or was around somebody. I mean, because really, if you're living in a home that has a COVID positive individual, you need to stay away from us as well too. We provided what was called COVID 80 at that point in time. That expired back in March. What we have done since then is that I would say that we don't have that many employees that are lacking in the sick time. If they've been here with us if they're a long-term employee, they generally, most of them have a bank of sick time. But what we do for them right now is we do an all-call to our entire staff and we ask for donation of hours. I know of nobody that has not received any donation of hours that has needed it in order to be away from work.
Okay.
But you could use that COVID money for those type of purposes because it's COVID effective.
Okay, so we would have to come back and talk about it and bring forward a resolution or
That would
whatever.
that would be the process for that. Yep.
Okay. And what about the individuals that are behind or on their utility bills? I know you kind of touched on it, and I know we've had this conversation before about individuals catching their bills up to date.
Yep.
With COVID money, and at
Yes,
one
sir.
time you said that wasn't possible because you were giving, it was a violation of the what's that, state law,
And I
anti-donation law.
Yeah, and I think the challenge we have with this, counselor, is that we probably need to talk a little bit more because I think we're almost saying the same thing through the process, but not, because I've not said that we cannot do that. These COVID dollars, this 11.7 million, one of the uses that is allowed by federal law when they established it is for the repayment of utilities, rent, and any of that nature. The challenge you have, though, is that any of those monies have to be going to something COVID affected or COVID related. So if we have somebody that has not paid their bill pre-COVID and they're behind, I cannot use that money to pay their bill.
Okay.
If they are affected by COVID, we can do that. And I think, as we talked about all this stuff here, we get very creative as to how to fix some of the problems that we tackle. Next month, we will be bringing forward to you a lot of information. Out of all of our people that are behind, we have about 10 years worth of information. So we have people all the way back 10 years that have had trouble with their bill, and then we come forward. We're going to try to help everybody to some level. I'm not going to share that tonight because I want to save that for next month. But we're going to work all the way up there. We are trying to use as much of the state COVID money first. So anybody that wants help with their utility bill, we can help get their information into the state, and then the state can review to see if they'll help and contribute first. What I want to use our money for at the end, and I think we have about $800,000 set up as what I recommended for utility COVID relief within our $11.7 million, because that covered everybody that we believe is affected. I would like to use the state's COVID money first, and then we'll use that money later because our money can then go to something else. But the challenge we have is that the anti-donation goes into if there is no justifiable reason in order to do that, we can't do that. These monies are established for that purpose.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the last thing, just out of curiosity, because I was looking at the MOU with the Chavez County, and it referred to the fiscal agent being obviously Chavez County, but it's for $3 million.
Yes, sir.
So what happened to the other $2 million?
It's in my pillowcase. No, sir.
I'll be by your house tonight.
Yeah, come on by. I'll share. No, sir. So what happened is that we received Chavez County received the legislative $5 million. When that money was dedicated to Chavez County for the use at the Air Center, the project was listed as a southeast corner project and moving all that money over through there. About a month later, Ascent shows up and says, we want to build a large hangar out on your property. And at that point in time, through the conversation with Chavez County, through the conversation with the state economic development, through the conversation with the city, we said, can any of that money be put over to this? Because the whole idea about the $5 million is to create jobs, jobs, jobs. So moving $3 million over there's 350 jobs tied to the Ascent project. The answer was yes. We're still working on the paperwork in order to get that done, but $3 million is going to go to the Ascent project. The other $2 million, and you guys have already approved the expense of that $2 million, well, part of it, because we are also doing a utility plan to run the utilities, water, sewer from the tank around the north side of the taxiway or the runway, and then start down the southeast corner. We're going to take that as far as we can. The engineer's estimate for the planning was right around $250,000, and then the remainder of that money was going to go into infrastructure as far as we can go. We believe that depending on where we want to stop at, the city will have to probably put some money into it in order to bring that line the rest of the way. So $2 million stayed over in the southeast corner. $3 million went to the Ascent hangar over on the other side.
I guess what I was getting at is the $2 million was handled by the city and not the county. The county's only handling $3 million of it.
No, in all cases, this $5 million, by the legislative approval, the $5 million, the fiscal agent is the county. We're the operational body. So what is happening with that MOU is that we hire the contractors, we hire the consultants. Right. We're paying them, and then we're sending a bill to Chavez County as the fiscal agent, and then they're forwarding that bill on to the state for reimpayment, and then that'll come to Chavez County, and then it'll come back to us. Hopefully we don't get stuck with the mailing costs, but I'm kidding again. All right, but that's the process. So Chavez County remains the fiscal agent. All of our bills through that MOU go through Chavez County. Bill and I talk all the time about this, making sure that we're providing the information that their financial people need in order to forward on, because we don't want the state coming down on either one of us. And so that's the process that's going through.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, that exhausts my list. And let's move on to item number 4. Counselor Best.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution 21-81 adopting the updated Chavez County Hazard Mitigation Plan. This was pulled off the consent agenda by Counselor Oropesa.
I have a motion by Counselor Best. Activate your motion bot. And a second by Counselor Foster to approve resolution 21-81. Ms. Sanders, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. For your consideration this evening is Resolution 2181, which is adopting the Chaves County Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Ms. Sanders, a little closer to the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me better?
Yes.
All right. So this plan is a plan that has to be updated every 5 years. It has already been through the process and been approved by the state of New Mexico and by FEMA. And so the final step is the adoption by each of the 5 jurisdictions that are included in the plan. In order to be eligible for some types of pre- and post-disaster funding, you have to have a current plan. This plan was funded by a pre-disaster mitigation grant, which required a 25% match. So the city cost for this plan was $6,250, which was included in the final FY21 budget. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. At this point, I don't have any questions. I will ask, Councilor Pesa, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment, because I didn't go over the entire mitigation plan.
You didn't?
But what I saw on the plan, what I did read was it pertains to the safety of the community, the citizens, and you know, and it talks about the disasters and that kind of stuff. And so when I look at it, it doesn't specifically talk about any particular disaster like floods and those kind of things. But would you say that the COVID situation would be follow the disaster definition?
It's not allowable to be in a mitigation plan. So the mitigation plan is more of a natural hazard versus a pandemic. So a pandemic wouldn't be included in a mitigation plan. It's more of along the lines of floods, wildfires, severe storms, droughts, those kinds of things. But pandemics aren't included in mitigation plans.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I thought I'd ask.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I have no one else wishing to speak on this point. I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 21-81. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor of Resolution 21-81 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes 9-0. Ladies and gentlemen, items 5, 6, and 7 were approved when the agenda was improved as being part of the consent items. We now move on to item number 8. Counselor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is at the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Committee that I move to approve Resolution 22-03, declaring the intent of the city to issue taxable industrial revenue bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $9 million and to include Exhibits A and B.
I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs and a second by Counselor Foster to approve Resolution 22-03. Mr. Patterson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So, IRBs. We've seen these before. It stands for Industrial Revenue Bonds. This is a statutory mechanism to stimulate economic development within the community. Basically, the city issues bonds which are repaid through a mechanism whereby the city would take title to real estate where the project is going to occur and then leases it back, and those lease funds pay back the bond, and the bond is then used to build private infrastructure projects. With the idea that those private infrastructure projects will stimulate the economy and provide jobs. The city acts as the fiscal agent for the funds, but the city is never on the hook to pay any of the bond. It's central to the way this mechanism works that the city does not ever become financially responsible for these. Only the company that's building the infrastructure is ever on the hook to pay it. Admiral Beveridge is proposing to build a new warehouse facility at its location on Brasher. This would be a $9 million project. This proposed resolution is only the first step in the IRB process, hence the concept of declaring the intent to do this. What we will see in the coming months, if you approve this resolution, will be a whole slew of different documents, lease agreement, ordinance, indenture. There's a whole bunch of them. They're full of really mind-numbing boilerplate, which everyone will enjoy. So this was considered by the legal committee at its December 16 meeting and was recommended for adoption unanimously 4-0. So please now consider adoption of the proposed ordinance 2203 declaring intent to issue an IRB for the Admiral Beveridge project. Before I take any questions, we have several representatives from Admiral Beveridge who are here, and I'd like to invite them up to tell you a little bit about the proposed project.
All right. Gentlemen, if you come forward and identify yourselves for the record, please, and your positions with Admiral Beveridge. Just state your name and position.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Peter Kelton. I'm with the Rhodey Law Firm. I'm here today on behalf of Admiral Beveridge Corporation. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Keith Hartnett, CFO of Admiral Beveridge, and Robert Leba, who is the local manager of the City of Roswell facility. Keith, if you have anything that you'd like to add, I'm going to run through the pictures.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, thank you very much for allowing us to visit with you today. We're very excited about the possibility, or not the possibility, because we've already broke ground, to build a 106,000 square foot facility, very similar to one that we built in Albuquerque. Admiral Beveridge basically is trying to provide the right type of services as well as a property and an effect that we not only need to be functional, but also for the city to be proud of. A lot of times we in effect use our facility itself for services that could be rendered, meetings and such in our meeting rooms and things along those for us to be good citizens of the city. Our business has been here for a very long time and used to be called the Maloof Company. And almost 12 years ago in March, Admiral Beveridge, a Wyoming-based company, purchased Maloof. They've invested a huge amount of money in allowing us to prosper and grow our company. So we're very proud of what it is they provide to us. And Roswell, basically, in this particular part of the state itself, is extremely important to the business itself. So from the standpoint of what you're seeing here is a site map. We won't go through all the detail because it's kind of boring. It's just a warehouse. Our business basically is our beverages. The vast majority of it is alcohol, some non-alcoholics, paper goods. So we're always expanding in a way, in effect, since we have trucks that are going all over the state, might as well have it filled with stuff in effect that people need. So this picture here is right now, I think probably over the last couple of days, is the structure itself. It's down at the corner of South Main and Brasher. So if you're down in that neck of the woods, you'll see it, and it's definitely very prominent. So that structure. This is what the Albuquerque facility is, but the plans are exactly the same. So with this one will look, only it'll be about half that size. The inside of the warehouse itself, and what I was referring to in meetings and stuff, this is a meeting room like we do. We're very proud of how that came out and such, but in effect for our employees and for the public to be able to use. So that being said, any questions I might have, or you might have, that in effect I can answer?
Any questions, councilors? I have no one. Okay,
Great.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Let me, I don't know who wants to jump in here, but this is a step in a multi-step process for the city, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Patterson. You want to touch on that briefly?
Yeah, as I mentioned, this is only a resolution to declare the intent. What we'll see coming forward in coming months, if you would choose to adopt this resolution, Admiral Beveridge's bond counsel will propose documents. The city attorney will review them and then bring them forward to the legal committee. This requires, to issue an IRB, you have to adopt an ordinance, with 2 readings and the whole thing. And then, as I intimated earlier, then there's a lease document, then there are bond documents, including an indenture. There's a lot of paperwork.
Okay.
I just want to say Parker nailed it right on the head. A lot of documents. We would come back, do a first reading, second reading of a bond ordinance. Upon adoption of the bond ordinance, there would be drafts of a lease agreement, an indenture, and a bond purchase agreement. And after all of that's finalized, bond ordinance would hopefully be adopted. And then we'd move on to closing to occur about a month afterwards.
Okay. Thank you. Councilors, questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 22-03. A no or nay rejects it. Once again, a yes or aye approves 2203. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
I have Councilor Moore negative. I have 8 positive. I believe. Yes. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 9, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that we approve with the recommendation of the Finance Committee, Resolution number 22-04, which amends the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022 by increasing the revenue and expenses to various funds.
I have a motion by Councilor Perry and a second by Councilor Foster to approve Resolution 22-04. Ms. Davies.
Good morning, or good afternoon again.
Yeah, how about evening?
Consider approval of Resolution 2204, approving the budget adjustment for the fiscal year ending 6/30 of 22. This is a housekeeping item. The detail is in your packet. It's Exhibit A. In revenue, we have an increase of $336,000. It consists of auction items for various funds for $189,000, also included in expense for $189,000. The administrative and logistical support for the sale of those auction items is $20,000 revenue and $20,000 in expense. We have additional donations received this fiscal year of $27,000, and then the expense associated with that, so the departments can actually use that money and purchase items, is $628,000. We have $100,000 in revenue for the Roswell Great Blocks grant. In expenses, we have $2.4 million that's on here. The settlement of the hospital charges with Eastern New Mexico Medical Center is $249,000. The purchase of the parks mower is $119,000. The budget authority for the police to use their available JAG fund grant is $190,000. We've got $20,000 for the purchase of a beverage cart for the golf course. We've got $74,000, which is additional funds for the landfill to repair all the damage from the flooding and the levee break this last summer. We've got $186,000 additional funds for the water department for the VFD project. Got $130,000 additional funds for wastewater for the reconstruction of 3 manholes on North Atkinson that was approved at the December 9th City Council meeting, and then $637,000 for wastewater for the North Garden sewer replacement project that was also approved at the December 9th Council meeting. And transfers, we only have two, $20,000 to transfer from general fund to the golf course to cover the beverage cart. These were all approved at the January 6th Finance meeting 3-0, and I stand for any questions.
I have Councilor Foster. Councilor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. the 74,101 from the damage for the flooding, are we receiving disaster relief from the state for that? We're not. We're eligible for it, are we not?
My understanding is that we did not hit the levels that were required for the reimbursements and for the federal. We do have some state dollars coming in, according to Mr. Matthews.
And that's what I was thinking, that we did get money from the state and that this would fall under infrastructure so that we should be able to use that monies for that.
Yeah, I think we would work our way into the enterprise funds from the funds that can't generate their own money all the way up to this. We are healthy within the sanitation fund as well too, so.
Yeah, I do think that it should go towards the streets first because we can't.
And we'll bring it,
replenish those.
we'll bring it back from there.
All right, thank you. That's all.
That exhausts my list. I have no one else asking to speak. So at this point, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 22-04, the budget adjustment resolution. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor of Resolution 22-04, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay.
Aye.
And the final vote is 8-1. Oh, I think, did Councilor Kennard say aye? I thought she did. Okay.
Thank you. That's 9-0, Mayor.
All right, 9-0. Thank you. Next up, item number 10 was removed from the agenda, so we're moving on to item number 11. Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the unanimous request of the Legal Committee, I move to approve to advertise to hold a public hearing and adopt proposed ordinance 22-01, amending Article 60 of the Roswell zoning code relating to signs.
I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs as soon as she activates her motion box. I don't have it. There it is. Nope. One more.
It goes away.
There we go. And I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to have a to authorize to advertise for a public hearing for ordinance 22-01. Mr. Patterson.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. We are asking you to consider some limited changes to Article 60 of the zoning code, which governs the posting and maintenance of both personal and commercial signs within the city. The idea here is that we want to change some of the rules that we have currently because that's not the way that things have been done in the past, and we would like to bring the law into compliance with reality rather than try and make reality comply with the law. Because it has created quite a few headaches for code enforcement to try and change the way the Roswell has always done things. And so what we're looking at is changes mainly to temporary signs that are placed in the rights of way. And so what we're looking at doing is allowing temporary signs to be placed in, and also temporary signs to be placed in the rights of way abutting private property with the permission of the private property owner, as long as those signs don't otherwise create a hazard or infringe the other provisions of the sign ordinance. We also are modifying the way we handle temporary signs. Right now, the ordinance kind of name checks a couple of different things, special events signs, political signs, and then has different provisions for them. What we're proposing is that we would kind of boil that into a catch-all called temporary signs, which are defined as those signs which relate to a particular event or occurrence, and basically say that once that event or occurrence occurs, then within 5 days after that, you would need to take that sign down, which addresses the real concern here, which is that you get signs that stay up, months after the event, and they just clutter the rights of way. The last thing that we're proposing is clarification of some of the powers of code enforcement. When they do find a sign like this that is in violation, they have, if this were adopted, they would have the ability to take that sign and they would provide some kind of a notice to the property owner. We've taken your sign. If you want it, come get it within X number of days. Otherwise, we're going to dispose of it. So that protects people's rights, in their property. They can come get their sign that's in violation, but it also allows code enforcement a mechanism. Besides just citing people into court, which is not typically an effective way to deal with these kinds of issues, they can just remediate that issue and then deal with the sign owner at that time. This was considered first by the legal committee at December 16th. That's a little out of ordinary. Normally, proposed revisions to the zoning code go through planning and zoning first. However, this was a request by the legal committee that we take a look at this, especially in light of the election and some of the questions about where signs can be put up. That said, the timing of this, it won't have much of an effect on this election, because by the time we get this passed through our process, the election will be mostly over, but it will be in place, hopefully, if you choose to adopt it for upcoming seasons. So this was recommended 4-0 for approval, or to recommend to authorize to advertise at legal, and so we would ask you to consider that action now. Thank you. And I stand for any questions.
Councilors, once again, this is simply the authorization to advertise. This is not final action. We will have a public hearing and a vote on the final bill, on the final ordinance. Councilor Oropesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this is a reading for advertisement, but I think there's a lot of questions right now out there as to how the political signs are going to be handled. Because obviously, when this one, we take action on this one, it's going to be way too late for this cycle.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I was asked by Councilor Stubbs to share with you the temporary administrative directive that we have put in place. We did a very similar directive during the presidential election year, as we discussed it at that point in time. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understands. So I'm going to read what my directive was in order to answer that question, so that everybody has the same chance to hear it. So signs related to the March election until June 30th, 2022 will be allowed with respect to item 8 of the code. Signs must be temporary in nature and should not conflict with the other 7 reasons listed in Article 60, Section 2. They may not create any other safety hazard issues, such as blockage within the sight triangle, blockage of pedestrian traffic, and such. This temporary directive is based upon the city's past practice regulating signage in the past. That's all right. It is only allowed for the next 6 months or until the City Council initiates any permanent changes, whichever comes first. This is how we will deal with the election signs. They will be allowed administratively because we don't have an effective way in order to police them underneath a certain code, and it's to give you all a chance to review this to determine, because I've heard from a lot of you that space, the parkway area between a sidewalk and the street is maintained by the contiguous property owners, and so placing a temporary sign there should be an ability of the individual that's contiguous to that to share their mind or their vision for whatever's on that sign. So the election signs will be allowed within the city parkways that are contiguous to private property. City parkways that are contiguous to city property, they remain not allowed. So if you go over by any of the park systems, and so any of the city parks, you have the sidewalk abutting up to the park, you have a parkway and then a curb, that property, it remains off limits. But if it is a contiguous property owner, a contiguous business owner that owns that property, they are allowed to use the city way for these temporary signage. And temporary signage for the elections is only one type of sign. I know there's a lot of church signs out there. I know that there's a lot of real estate signs. So those are all temporary in nature.
And the signs, when you talk about the intersections, the stop signs and what's it called, a sight
triangle.
Sight triangle. Are they going to be able to place any type of signs close to the stop sign or
I would say if we follow what we did a year ago, or it was the presidential election, I believe, if we follow that, signs can be placed into the triangle, but they cannot block the visual aspects of how you come up there. Now the sight triangle is wider or longer down each way depending on how fast the vehicles go. So some of the four-way stops will be allowed to have the smaller signs because they do not block, do not create a health and safety issue. That's my understanding. Okay, I'm getting the nod too. So, but if you if you put a billboard sign, you know, one that has posts and everything, and it's right where the visual is, right, so that a driver cannot see around it, those will not be allowed.
See, that doesn't make sense to me, because that the place where the stop signs are at are city property, but we're saying that you can't put signs on city property like on the parks and what have you, but we're still allowing them to put it right there on the sight triangle.
Sure. And the challenge you have is that if you look at in the downtown historic area, we have very wide street widths, but the asphalt is very narrow, and so there is like 10-foot parkways down through there. That is city property also that goes in front of all those houses. It's no different than the sight triangle itself, other than it's at a sight triangle's at a corner, but everything in front of those houses is still owned by the city. Nobody's paying taxes on that property. And so that was why we made the distinction that you cannot put anything in that's going to interfere pedestrian-wise, vehicular-wise, or create some type of a hazard. And we kept it as simple as that. I understand what you're saying, but the sight triangle is no different than the parkway in front of somebody's house, at least in the aspects of the right-of-way.
So, Mr. Mayor, you know, I don't know if I need to make a motion or whatever, but I would like to ask the chair to see if we can get a clarification from the attorneys. I mean the state attorney's office.
Mr. Nebb, will you direct the city attorney to seek any clarification on this?
I am happy to direct the city attorney to take care of this.
Can I just ask clarification of what, and with what state attorney? You mean the Attorney General?
The Attorney General, yes.
The Attorney General doesn't just answer questions that we have for him, though. But what is the question that you would like to ask about this?
Just to get a clarification of why is it okay to have a sign by the stop sign, which is city property, and it's not okay to have signs on regular city property?
I don't see, I mean, okay, we can ask the Attorney General that, but I don't think he's going to answer that question. He's going to say, well, that's a question for you to answer.
And, yeah, and Counselor, and I would answer that as well too. It is a subjective decision that we've made that we do not want, because there's not a contiguous property owner next to, so like a park, and I'll use Cielo Grande because, well, doesn't have a really good sidewalk, but Cielo Grande, we do not want sides up and down College because there's not a contiguous property owner next to that. That property, what we're saying is that because we own all of that property, everything that is a right-of-way, we own the parks, we own the right-of-way and everything else, we're saying because of the relationship that we have with the contiguous property owners, we will allow signs to be placed in front or contiguous to a property owner. We will not allow a sign to be placed because we're the property owner. And so that's the differential with that. So when you get to the corner, anybody with a corner lot, they have two front right-of-ways, and then they have the corner that is acceptable for permission to grant to that area. I agree. I don't think we'll get a good answer from the state because what we're talking about is what type of signage will we allow on our property. So.
Okay, so just to be clear, The answer is no, we will not ask the Attorney General for a clarification.
No,
I
we
will
will
ask.
ask.
I will ask.
You've
Okay.
you've asked us, we will try to get a response.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have Counselor Foster and Counselor Perry, and I exhaust my list. Counselors, once again, this is simply an authorization to advertise. This is not final action. That will not occur unless it is authorized. Counselor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted the clarification, and Mr. Neff had already said it, that realtor, this is not just for political signs. I would say 90% of the realty signs that are out there right now are breaking city ordinance, because most people think that they own their property up to the curb. They don't. The between the sidewalk and the curb, which is city right of way, is city property. And even though we have to take care of it, it's not our property. And that's why if we drive around town, if we enforced it to the letter of the law, we'd be pulling up a lot of realty signs. And we want people to be able to sell their homes. And so that's why this is not just for political, it's also for other signs that we have out, and we want to be able to, like our attorney said, we're having to change the reality of, or change our law so that it meets the reality of what most people use it for anyway. So I yield.
Thank you. Counselor Perry, you have the floor, and that exhausts my list.
Just a statement to clarify maybe a little bit. The spirit when the committee was looking at this, I believe, was more that if we are asking, or not asking, but requiring for private citizens to maintain additional property, then they should have the ability to put temporary signs on that property that the city is requiring for them to maintain. So I have properties, they're in the middle of blocks, but I live on a corner property, and even though that is a corner property with a stop sign and side triangle and everything, the city still requires for me to maintain all of that area. So I think that's all that the committee was looking at, was that the spirit of if we're requiring our citizens to maintain these right-of-ways, they should have the ability to voice their opinion, to be able to sell their homes, to be able to put an open house, party, whatever that is for the day, and for guests to be able to see that as they're driving by. Thank you.
All right, that exhausts my list. At this time, I will ask for a voice vote, as this is simply an authorization to advertise. This is not final action, councilors. This is simply authorizing to advertise for a future public hearing and action and vote. A yes or aye authorizes the advertisement for the future public hearing. A no or nay rejects that. All those in favor of authorizing the public hearing and future vote for proposed ordinance 22-01 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Seeing none, passes 9-0. Next up, item number 12, Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, at the recommendation of the Legal Committee, I move to authorize to advertise to hold a public hearing to consider adoption of Ordinance 22-02, repealing Section 16-9 and replacing it with Chapter 14, Article 5, the Clean Air Act.
I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to authorize to advertise for a future public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 22-02. Mr. Mavers.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. We're taking a month off from talking about cannabis to talking about cannabis smoke for just a few minutes. As you're all aware, of course, the cannabis ordinance that we've been preparing over the last several months has a very far-reaching effects into a number of other areas within our municipal code. This time we need to go ahead and modify our Clean Air Act in order to deal with some of the issues specifically having to do with the ability of the city to obtain applications and process for on-site consumption and special events that could potentially expose people to cannabis smoke. So, the City Council did previously determine some number of years ago that smoking of tobacco and other plants, now including cannabis, is a health hazard to those in enclosed spaces, and the Council also determined that the right to breathe clean and unpolluted air is a human right. The determinations were made way back in 2004 as part of the Roswell Smoke-Free Air Act. The City of Roswell, again, we believe unpolluted air is a human right, and secondhand smoke, though, should not be treated just simply as a nuisance, because the adoption of the State of New Mexico's Cannabis Regulation Act created additional urgency for an ordinance update. Therefore, we'd like to include additional protections against secondhand smoke to protect public health, safety, and welfare. In the packet that you received, you'll see a side-by-side comparison, a red line comparison of the old ordinance versus the new ordinance. We wanted to draw your attention to a few specific items in there. Section 14-41, again, that's being updated to include secondhand smoke of vape products as well as cannabis. There is some new findings that have come out that evidently some of the aerosols and the vaporizer products now there's increasing concerns about the health, especially to your lungs, when you're using a vape product. So we need to include also additional definitions related to vapes and cannabis, and then we update the locations and the rationale for exemptions, and update locations and rationale for unregulated use. Okay. The declarations of a non-smoking establishment, again, updates there. Enforcement, we are updating the enforcement protocols as well, and the fines and violations and penalties. The effective date of the ordinance will be as soon as it becomes effective. The legal committee did meet and reviewed the proposed ordinance and approved it 4-0 at their meeting on December 16th. And we're asking that the City Council now authorize to advertise to hold a public hearing and consider adoption of Ordinance 2202. I stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments, councilors? Once again, this is only an authorization to advertise for the future public hearing and vote. Seeing no one on my list to speak, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye authorizes the advertisement for a future public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 2202. A no or nay rejects that. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No. Aye.
All those in favor, all those opposed say no. And the vote is, I have Councilor Sanchez voicing a no. Councilor Sanchez is a no on this. So it's
Mr. Mayor, we'll amend that. Thank you.
okay. That's 8-1. Next up is item number 13, Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, at the recommendation of the Legal Committee, I move to approve ABF roofing and foam to repair and upgrade the roof from metal to TPO on Building 93 at the Roswell Air Center for an amount of $265,234.31 plus the gross receipts tax.
Excuse me. I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to approve the authorization of ABF Roofing and Foam to repair and upgrade the roof on Building 93. Mr. Stark.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. What you have in front of you is a request to approve the expenditure for repairing the roof on Building 93. This roof was damaged in the summer of 21 due to the hailstorm that we had. So we will be receiving some insurance money on that, but it's also one of the high priority buildings for us to get leased, as it is food service quality, and we want to get this done early and upgrade that roof from a metal roof, which has the screws that are at this point getting old and leaking, and then the hail damage has caused some other problems. So what we would be doing is engaging ABF under our local on-call roofing contract and having them put on a TPO roof. with foam in between the ridges of the metal. We would not be taking the metal off that is on there at the time. And there's the picture of the building. I stand for questions.
All right, any questions or comments from Mr. Stark? Seeing none, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the repair and upgrade to the roof to Building 93 by ABF Roofing and Foam. A no or nay rejects the authorization. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Why?
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes 9-0. Next up, item number 14, Counselor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, recommended by the Legal Committee, I move to approve the lease agreement between the city and Southeast New Mexico Community Action Corporation Roswell Head Start Center 2 at 503 East McGaffey to provide an early childhood development program as part of the Head Start for approximately 154 low-income children, to include Exhibit A.
I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs and a second by Counselor Foster to approve a lease agreement with the Southeast New Mexico Community Action Corporation, Roswell Head Start Center number 2. Mr. Vermiglio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. The Roswell Head Start program does wish to renew their lease at the property at 503 East McGaffey. Of course, the Head Start program provides early childhood development for 154 low-income children, and this is center number 2. The other center is taken care of by Chavez County at their property at 209 East Hendricks. So we have one and they have one for the Head Start program. Roswell Head Start would pay an annual rent in the grand amount of $1 per year for the use of the building and will provide insurance. The term on this, we're asking for 5 years with up to 3 additional 5-year periods upon written mutual consent. The Legal Committee did recommend 4-0 at their meeting on December 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Counselor Best, go ahead. You have the floor.
In that contract, we have all of the insurance and all of the liability stuff in the files every year to make sure that they're covered with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Counselor Pesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for the benefit of the people, can you explain why we're only charging $1?
The benefit back to the community, Head Start's this lease has been around since long before I got here. And from what I understand, the benefit back to the community through the programs, through Head Start, in lieu of paying rent, they get the use of these facility, because if we didn't have this, then it would change the scope of that.
What is the actual amount that we count that they put back into the community?
All of the details on the financial benefits back to the community are built in that lease, the details are in that lease contract.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have no one else on my list. At this point, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the lease agreement with Southeast New Mexico Community Action Corporation, Roswell Head Start Center number 2, as presented. A no or nay rejects the lease. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes 9-0. Next up, item number 15, Counselor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Legal Committee was busy this month.
Yep.
Again, the recommendation of the Legal Committee, I move to approve the re-evaluated award recommendation for RFP 22-003 for janitorial custodial services as a multi-source award and that the city manager negotiate with the 3 offerers.
I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs and a second by Counselor Foster to approve the reevaluation of award recommendation for RFP 22-003. Mr. Patterson.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This one, you may recall, you may be getting a sense of deja vu right now, because this is the second time that we are asking you to consider award of this RFP. This was originally brought before you back in October, and at the time it was recommended there were 3 offerors for this project, which is to provide a pool of vendors to provide janitorial services to city departments. And we wanted to have a pool because different janitorial services have different capacities, and so we wanted each department to be able to pick one of them and have standing contracts with each of these vendors so that they can say, well, I want to use this one, and we already have the contract there. It's already been through a competitive process, and it streamlines it in the long run. So the first time we did this, it was recommended there were 3 offerors, and the original award recommendation from the evaluation committee was to award it to 2 and not to the 3rd one. And so after that occurred in October, the council approved the recommended award. There was a protest pursuant to the procurement code, which was filed by the company that was not included in the award recommendation. That caused the purchasing office, as they're required to do by state statute, to go back and take another look and to see if there was anything that we could do to improve that process and whether it needed to be reevaluated. It was the determination of the purchasing office that needed to be done. Again, this is part of the statutory requirements of how we handle all procurements, and these due process protections are built into the system so that whenever there is a chance that something could have been done better, or that somebody was didn't get a fair shake, then we can reevaluate that process and remedy that situation. And so it was the determination of the purchasing office at that time that it needed to be reevaluated. The process at that point was that we did not make anybody do any additional work. They didn't have to resubmit or go back. They took the existing proposals that had been submitted, and they put together a new team and reevaluated it. And this is the recommendation of the new of the second evaluation committee. The difference is that upon reevaluation, all 3 vendors were recommended for award. And I will tell you that that is about as much as I can say about the process, because we have not awarded this yet. And by award, I mean actually gone all the way to signing final documents with them. So the contents of the proposals are themselves confidential under the procurement code. And that is for the protection of the offerors themselves, because if we let out the details of one, that gives the other one a competitive advantage. And so we have to keep all of those details under wraps. But I will hope that you will understand that the process, although it can sometimes be cumbersome for the offerors when there is a process of protest and having to go back, this is ultimately a process that we have to do, and it's one that's intended to prevent or to promote the fairness and the best value for the city. So that's what we had here, and the outcome was that all 3 vendors were recommended for award. This was brought before the legal committee in December, and they voted unanimously to recommend adopting the reevaluated award recommendation. So we would ask that you would consider that at this time. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions.
All right. At this point, I have no questions for Mr. Patterson. Therefore, I will ask for a voice vote to approve the reevaluation award recommendation for RFP 22-003. A yes or aye agrees with that reevaluation. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay.
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 I have 2 nays, Councilor Oropesa and Councilor Moore. 7 yes, motion passes. Next up, item number 16, Councilor Stubbs.
You see it now? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, at the recommendation of the legal committee, I move to approve to authorize roads company to install a new HVAC control system in Building 524, which is the Sidney Gutierrez Middle School at the RIAC.
I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs and a second by Counselor Foster to approve the to authorize roads company to install a new HVAC control system at Sidney Gutierrez Middle School. Mr. Stark.
Hello again. You have before you a request for approval to award through a CES contract this job to Rhodes Company. The issue with the current control system for the boiler is that basically it's just too old. It's run by a Windows 98 system that's not supported anymore. The rest of the system is proprietary pieces, so they're hard to get parts for. So I realize it's a big expense, but we're looking to upgrade that. And unfortunately, the contract or the proposal that we had a date through December 29th, and the price has gone up. So the new price, including tax, is $101,909, and I understand we can move through this at this meeting, and I stand for any questions.
All right, I have Counselor Perry and then Counselor Stubbs. Counselor Perry, you have the floor.
Just a comment to make that that building where City Gutierrez is at currently, if any counselors have not been out there to tour and see that, from where it was when we originally leased that to them to where it is now significantly different, and I've just seen such a huge change in how we how those buildings are being maintained, and that building has really been revived. It was probably on its way to demolition one day, and has just had a significant resurrection, if you would say. So it's a pleasure to be able to do this kind of thing, to invest back into a building like this that's being utilized for these kids. So that's all.
Thank you. I have Counselor Stubbs, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mr. Stark mentioned, we have a new proposal from Rhodes in the amount of $101,909. So, Mr. Mayor, I would ask if we could have unanimous consent for to amend the amount to that number.
Is there any objection to revising the amount to $101,909? Counselors, any objection? Hearing none, it is so moved. Any other comments, Counselor?
No, thank you.
At this point, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye authorizes Rhodes Company to install the new HVAC control system on Building 524, Sidney Gutierrez Middle School, in the amount of $101,909. A no or nay rejects that approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes 9-0. Next up is item number 17, Counselor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, at the recommendation of the Legal Committee, I move to approve the scope of work for RFP 22-010, Security Guard Services for the Roswell Air Center and other city departments.
I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs and a second by Counselor Foster to approve the scope of work for RFP 22-001. Mr. Stark. Oh, Mr. Christopher.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. This RFP is, like I said, for security services for the Air Center and for other city departments. This is required under the TSA security directives that we have to have an armed guard while TSA is open and screening passengers. We're trying to streamline services too for other departments, so if they need security services, they can also use this RFP. And I stand for questions.
All right. Questions or comments? Counselor Perry, and then, well, Counselor Perry, you have the floor.
I know I asked this at legal, but just for clarification, because this is a requirement by the feds for the security to happen. We're not able to go through fast track to get this done, because I know right now our officers are carrying the load for that right now, which is great that they're doing, and they're getting some time on that. But I'd like to have those officers out on the patrol as early as possible.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's.
Yeah, we did look at that, and as we discussed at legal, we talked about emergency procurement and different mechanisms that are built in, but none of them quite matched what we needed here, so we weren't able to do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilor Oropesa. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Perry already asked the question.
Okay. Great minds think alike. I have no one else on my list to speak, therefore I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the scope of work for RFP 22-001. This is simply the scope of work. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. And the vote is 9-0. Next up is item number 18, Councilor Stubbs.
Mr. Mayor, thank you again. At the recommendation of the Legal Committee, I move to approve an expenditure of $1,337,887.76 for design and construction engineering services developed by Armstrong Consulting, to be reimbursed from the county state legislative appropriations.
I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to approve an engineering expenditure of $137,887.76 under Task Order D to Armstrong Consulting. Mr. Stark.
Good evening again. As mentioned, this is a request to expend I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, I skipped ahead. Oh yeah, 1.3337,887 for engineering services, both for the design and construction of the Ascent MRO project, and this will be reimbursed out of the $3 million from the county. But basically, the history is that this has been through the approval process with the RFP for the Armstrong services, and it's on the master project list. It's in the PSA. We've been through a lot with this, and you guys will see it again as we move through the construction side of it. This is the engineering side only. And as Councilor Stubbs mentioned, it did pass 4-0 at the legal in December, and I stand for questions.
All right. At this point, I have no questions. No one asking to speak on this matter. Therefore, I see a hand? Oh, no. Okay. At this point, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Task Order D, the expenditure of approximately $1.3 million for design, construction, engineering services. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. And the vote is 9-0. Item number 19, Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the recommendation of the Legal Committee, I move to approve Armstrong Consultants Task Order E, an expenditure of $525,256 for design and construction engineering services.
I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to approve Task Order E as in Edward to Armstrong Consulting in the amount of $525,256. Mr. Stark.
This is basically the same thing as the one before, different project, obviously different price, but the process was the same to get to this point. It's on the list. This particular project is the refurbishment of the apron in front of the terminal and then over to the west in the general aviation area. It is backed up by an FAA AIP grant of $3.1 million, so we will be reimbursed on this one as well. Legal also recommended 4-0 in their December meeting for approval on this. I stand for questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Stark? At this point, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or I approves task order E as in Edward to Armstrong Consulting for expenditure of $525,256 for design and construction engineering services. A no or nay rejects task order E as in Edward. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes 9-0. Next up is item number 20, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that we approve the cost estimates for the exhibit and security measure upgrades for the Spring River Zoo in the amount of $139,000. No, I'm sorry. That's just in security. The financial considerations are video security of $140,000, fencing security of $120,000, farmland entry design of $400,000, bear exhibit design $60,000 for a total of $720,000.
I have a motion by Councilor Perry, as soon as he activates his motion button, and a second by Councilor Foster to fund security upgrades and facility developments at the Spring River Zoo. Mr. Wright, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I come here tonight to request funding for 4 projects that will improve our guest experience, security, and animal welfare. The first one we'll tackle is our video security. Why? The zoo needs a more robust security program. With our perimeter fence and staff there, we need to make sure that we have 24-hour, 7 days a week security. So our plan is to improve the zoo's Wi-Fi, utilizing the 7 existing poles that we have in the zoo for the lights. We will also be able to establish multiple video cameras around the zoo on the poles, the buildings, and our perimeter fence line. These updates will allow the staff or any other city staff member, security, things like that, to be able to access those videos day or night. It would also enhance the guest experience that we can kind of market the zoo and see what's going on during events. The cost estimates are based on an RFP that was provided to the Roswell Independent School District, and we're just piggybacking off of that, and that is the quote that they gave us, $139,022.84. The next item that we want to discuss is our perimeter fence security. Currently, the perimeter fence at the zoo needs to be updated to an 8-foot section for 3,065 feet of space, because the rest of that's 6 foot. So we need to go from 6 foot to 8 foot. Our 8-foot section includes the area that's right around the pond area, as well as a wooden fence along Atkinson and College Boulevard. The rest of it's 6 foot. And mainly because we do have bears and big cats in our collection, it's required that we have an 8-foot fence. So our plan is basically to replace the 6 foot with the 8-foot fence. Cost estimates are a little bit sketchy right now based on the supply chain issue right now, but we've had estimates for the raw materials anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000, and so we're estimating about similar in installment, and that's why we're asking for $120,000 to replace the fencing with 9-gauge chain link. But there's also an option right now where wrought iron fencing is actually cheaper per linear foot than chain link fence, so we could actually improve our College Boulevard front and actually have a wrought iron with decorative metal sheet cutouts of animals to actually address it and make it more attractive for our guests too. So some of that just depends on when we go through that process and what we can do with the materials that we have. The third item that I'm asking for is design work for the Leprino farmland experience and entry buildings. Why do we need that? The community support new experience for the zoo. It helps attract more guests to the zoo in Roswell to improve our community and animals' quality of life. I'm kind of following a 2018 master plan that we did with a new entry concept that needs a little bit of orientation for where I put the barn. I give it a little bit more space than where it's originally at. but it's also to maximize all the space that we could have for the animals as well. And this is actually the first phase of the zoo upgrade based on the master plan. So our plan is to hire a professional firm initially to help us kind of draw up the concepts a little bit more in detail so that we can then fundraise. But then also to take those initial drawings and hire a professional architectural firm to actually get us constructionary, boots on the ground type of design, engineered, architectural, code leveled drawings up. So the estimated cost that we have for that is $400,000. Since I've been here, we've kind of been working off a $4 million project, doing Leprino funding of $2 million, as well as using some of the American Recovery Act funding of about $1.5 million. So that allows us with the drawings and the plans to help hopefully find a few benefactors that can help us raise the remaining $500,000. So that's kind of where we're going. About 10% of constructionary cost would be what the design work would be. That's pretty standard. The last thing I'm asking for is same premise with the design work for our bears. We need to improve the quality of life for our bears to remove them off their concrete structure. And it's also part of our 2018 master plan. And it's also to address some of our detractors with what we want, but it is still the right thing to do. And so my plan is to relocate the bears holding to where we kind of had the raccoons and coatis presently, make their exhibit where the audads are at, so now they have natural substrate and the whole bit. And the holding will be very similar in construction and setup and cost to what our mountain lion exhibit was, but I want to theme it, decorate it to where it looks more like a cave. And I have basically the concept there is the cost of, I think we were talking about $600,000-ish for what the mountain lion exhibit was. So 10% of that, $60,000. I think we should be easily able to do that, since most of it's just the building design cost and not necessarily the yard and facilities. But as you can see, I want to green it up, and I kind of want to actually design something where I can attract the bears to a viewing area with hot air or cool air to attract them into a glass area where people can see them, and the animals would have a choice. So there is a lot of thought process I've had since I've been here about how to not just make things better, but to really also make it better for our guests and their experience. So what I ask you to consider is funding the approval for those 4 projects that we talked about, and at the January 6th meeting with the Finance Committee, it was approved 3-0. I stand for your questions.
All right, I have Counselor Best and Counselor Foster. Counselor Best, you have the floor.
So my question on the fence, will it be beaver secure?
The majority of it, yes, but because there is the river that goes through it, we're trying to figure out a way of making sure that we can secure that area, but still also allow egress of the water as part of the, I think it's EPA that oversees that aspect for us. Yep.
All right, I have Counselor Foster and Counselor Orpesa. Counselor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Could we scroll back to the fencing?
To the which one?
To show the fence. Oops. Yeah, that's the one. I see that this is the exterior perimeter of also the park. That's not part of the zoo. And I know that portion of it is going to remain open and free, but I'm trying to understand why we're fencing the whole area and not just the zoo area.
That is a good question. I actually sat down with Joe and showed him the numbers. You're talking only about 600 to 700 feet different if I went across around the park area, but when we're really looking at the whole perimeter, is if I can get all that real estate at 8 foot, that's now our perimeter. So it's not really going to change anything with our operation. The zoo is the only park that does close when our operational hours are shut down. So still having an 8-foot fence would still be appropriate around our park as well. So it's not really going to change accessibility for our day guests.
Mr. Mayor, and I would add as well too, this follows the fence that is currently there. And so Spring River Park, we open it up with the zoo. It is a free area. We close it at the time of the zoo as well too. And so we've already got that system set up. So the replacing of the perimeter fence for that area made more sense of us than chopping through around the tracks and then back up.
And that explains it. when you said that when we keep it open, when the zoo shut down, we don't, because and so the 8-foot would still contain the animals when it's shut down. So
And then the park is free every day that the zoo is open.
all right, I yield. Thanks.
I have Councilor Orpesa, and that exhausts my list. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since when did the USDA change the requirements to 8-foot fence?
I can't really say they changed the requirement as much as it is we do have a new inspector this year, and she's enforcing the standards. Every zoo I've worked at has been 8 foot. So I can't really speak for previous inspectors and why they didn't enforce the standard. But because we have bears and mountain lions, I specifically asked the question, why, what's the standard? Why is the reason? And the inspector told me it was because we had bears and big cats. And that was something she researched and consulted with her supervisor on.
Because we have them since...
That may be, but until it's brought up through the inspector, that's where I'm going with that one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I have no one else on my list. At this time, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or I approves the expenditure of the exhibit and security measure upgrades for the Spring River Zoo as presented. A no or nay rejects them. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed, please say nay.
Nay, with an explanation, please.
Okay. And I have, final vote is, Councilor Sanchez, can you activate your vote box? Okay. I have 8-1 with Councilor Orpesa in the negative. Councilor Orpesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I understood our city manager correctly, a lot of this funding is coming from the government. What's it called? The American Recovery
American
Act.
Rescue Plan money.
And I think the zoo is important, but I think what's more important is our streets. And I think we should be able to use that money and bring our streets up to speed before we start tackling some other projects. Because again, when I ran, that was a number one issue that everybody had. Everybody was talking about we need to fix up our streets, not just patchwork, fix them up and get them out of the way. And I think this is a lot of money, and I think it could, in my personal opinion, it could be used for the betterment of the streets. Thank you.
All right. Public participation on non-agenda items. I have no one who signed up to speak on non-agenda items. I did, I think Mr. Espiritu has left. I realized, he's still there? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you behind. Sir, I owe you an apology. You had signed up to speak on item 8, and I just now snapped that I completely overlooked you. It's probably because you're sitting behind the assistant city attorney, and I didn't see you there. Would you like to go ahead? Are you sure? Because I owe you an apology. Okay, this was on the Admiral Beveridge IRB, and I believe you were going to say something in a positive. And so, council, this is my my error, unforced, and I apologize. Future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items we need to have discussed? I'm hearing none. Committee reports from our committees. Councilor Perry, Finance, anything you wish to share?
If I could just say, as part of finance, but also part of an overall, we're about to go into a new session with at Santa Fe with our representatives, and Councilor Stubbs and I were with the delegation that met with the governor. I can't remember what day it was. Friday.
Friday.
On Friday, thank you. It's been a long week. On Friday, we were supposed to meet in person, but because of COVID-related situations in Santa Fe, it had to be a video conference with some county commissioners and also some EDC representatives, and it was a good meeting discussing these projects at the Air Center. I think that the state of New Mexico, and particularly the governor's office, is going to have a significant amount of money to be able to divvy. There's a lot, but we have to understand and recognize that there are a lot of communities just like us reaching out for their shovelful as well. The governor did express that she did have a great desire to get money that was brought forth from the southeastern New Mexico portion of the state to return to the southeastern New Mexico area of the state. So we talked about these projects in length and as well about a four-way from here to the Texas line. So we do have the ears of the fourth floor in Santa Fe right now as she's looking at this. So I think that we as a council need to just be aware of that and be prepared to do our encouragement when it comes to their time in the next session. I think as well that Joe has a meeting. I had planned on just listening in on a little bit of it tomorrow, and he's going to speak about that as well. So I think we do have the attention of the state right now with these dollars and with infrastructure and different things. So that's just what I had to say.
All right, Public Safety, Counselor Best.
Ms. Sanders, I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts as a council, maybe I can speak for everybody, for putting together our Chaves County Hazard Mitigation Plan. You had to wait on FEMA, which is a normal thing, I think. So thank you very much for that. And Mike, thank you for putting all of our meetings together. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Pub Infrastructure, Counselor Roebuck is not here. Counselor Kennard, are you there? Earth to Counselor Kennard.
I'm here.
Anything you wish to share with the council about upcoming things for infrastructure?
No, sir, we didn't meet in December, so hopefully in January we'll have something, or this month for infrastructure, we'll be able to report something for February.
Uh-oh. I see Mr. Nahar coming up. That's never a good thing.
No, it's a good thing. Infrastructure, just counselors, on January 24th, you're going to see the first draft of the Cielo Grande baseball complex. So we invite you to join in person or virtual so you can see the first draft.
Okay. All right. General Services, Counselor Foster.
We didn't have a meeting as well in December, but we will be going over a lot of the seasonal stuff on our parks and our rec center. So I will be having some reports at our meeting, but I don't see that coming to us as anytime real soon. So thank you.
All right. And Legal, Counselor Stubbs.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As Dr. Mavers said earlier, we will be looking at cannabis one more time.
I can hardly wait. All right. Thank you, counselors. Mr. Nebb, I do wish to make note of the fact that we completed the entire agenda in approximately the same amount of time as you took to do your presentation. Not that I'm being critical. Please do not misunderstand. I just want to make note of that little tidbit for our constituents.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I got my second wind.
Ah, goody.
No, and I'll keep this this brief. One item that I do not have on there that Councilor Perry had brought up, and we're seeing the state figure out exactly how they're trying to get the money that they've received out to all of the municipalities, all the counties, all the work that they're trying to do. We will be involved in a meeting tomorrow. It'll be virtual as well too. The large conference room will be setting up, the TV, the governor, a lot of our secretaries of transportation, infrastructure, They're all going to be online as well too, expressing the desire that they would like our help in spending that money. And so one of the things that AJ 40 asked for with the Municipal League was for everybody to look at their ICIP list, put together their information and get it in. I will tell you that Mr. Fuentes worked on this, and we have essentially one sheets for a lot of projects going in there. The total amount that we are requesting of those projects that are on there is $231.4 million. We have offered, because this is something that the governor had mentioned to Councilor Stubbs and Councilor Perry, is that they would like, they're going to look more favorably at projects where we're involved and we have skin in the game as well too. So each one of these projects we have set out as an 80-20 match. And so as we've set them out there, so that would be our local match, or it will be coming from other sources like other grants and such like that. So I want to make sure that is not on my slide, but I wanted to make sure I brought that up. You are more than welcome, as long as we stay below the quorum. Otherwise, Ms. Call will post it, but you're more than welcome to stop in. It's a 9 to 4 tomorrow in the large conference room. The governor, the secretaries will all be speaking about what they want to see from us in order to get there. And then I believe the Municipal League is going to have an opportunity to share the projects that have been turned in for what they're looking for. So you're welcome to attend that meeting. All right. I had 3 other items that I was going to add to this. We were going to talk about the OSHA ETS. However, today the Supreme Court voted 6-3 for a stay for the business mandate of 100 employees or more to either establish a mandatory vaccination policy or a hybrid model that included vaccination, testing, weekly testing, and masks. So I will not cover that. We'll wait. That stay, we believe, will be in place until the Supreme Court takes on the entire issue as to whether or not the executive branch has the ability to enact this at all. They did find in favor of holding the health care out there, and that went 5-4. But I will talk about the large hangar project a little bit because I'll need your help on that one coming up really, really soon. And then we'll talk about meetings and presentations. So, as I said, we will be doing potentially a groundbreaking within the next 2 to 4 weeks of the Ascent project. And but I need to make sure that you understand, as we look through this project is now established into 3 phases. The demo, getting everything off the ground that's already there, the old concrete and everything. What's called the horizontal phase, that is all the site prep, that is getting utilities, that is getting the concrete poured and everything for that. And then the vertical phase, and that is the building itself and the structure. This is a 300 by 300 foot hangar. It is the first of what we hope is 2 in that area, and we're actually having tire kicking on some more. But with the Ascent project, we had to speed up the process a little bit based upon what the business needed to get this work moving, and so we are going to utilize the CES process. So we looked at an RFP process, we looked at a sole source process, we looked at what we did with Red Mountain Arsenal, partnering with the EDC. We believe that the CES process is the best process to go through there. So we believe that we'll be under demo within 10 days through the CES process with a contractor that is already mobilized on the property doing some other work. What we are trying to do is speed up this entire process. Right now, the tentative plan, if we stayed on track, means that the building will be occupied into next year. We're going to speed this up, and we believe that they'll be able to get in there by fall. So I believe that we can do an October occupancy for that. So all this slide is telling you is that this is where we're at with it. We are hoping to get this all done. I will be coming forward to you no later than March 10th of 2022 with a lease agreement with all the entities involved, because we'll have a lease agreement with the finance company, we'll have a lease agreement with Ascent. We will continue on. We have to have another MOU with the county, because a part of the site prep will be $4 million of it is LEDA money, and we're the recipient, so we cannot be the fiscal agent. So the money will come from the state, essentially through Ascent to the county, and then into the city. And that was because we cannot be the fiscal agent of money that we're receiving for the LEDA funds. And that's all I'll cover on the Ascent, but will be obligation to spend $6.5 million on the site prep will be coming forward. That the total work that we estimate on the hangar is about 8.5 is our estimate right now, or 8. So $3 million is the county dollars, $4 million is the LEDA money, and then there's still another $2.5 million that the city's going to put in. The LEDA money and the $2.5 million that the city is putting in, the business is going to be reimbursing through the lease payments back to us. So it'll be a window of time. That money will be at a 3% interest rate, I believe, is where we're sitting at. And so we're going to loan them the money in order to do that work, and then they're going to reimburse us back through the land lease. All right, and so that'll be coming forward. I believe that the obligation for the local funds will either be a special meeting in January, before the end of January, or the February 10th meeting at the latest for the obligation of the funds, the request for that. And then, of course, all the legal documentation will fall within that range. When it's ready, we'll bring it forward. But we are waiting on a final true cost of the project, because we don't have the final construction documents done. We haven't went out to the market to see what the cost will be, so we don't want to finalize that lease agreement until we have that information. Last thing, upcoming meetings and presentations. Of course, all board, commission, and committee meetings survive the holidays, remain on regular schedule now. We're back, everybody's all back to work, and so I did not put all the dates on there for the standing committees, any of our advisory committees or anything. We do have a peer gala scheduled for January 22nd. It's an employee recognition event. It'll be here at the Convention Center at 6 p.m. We try to do this as a thank you to our employees for their work. If you have signed up, please come, and I'll talk to the rest of you about possibly popping in at least so that we can see your smiling face, make sure that we can say thank you to everybody. We are having a Golf Vision public meeting on February 7th. Because we anticipate 40 to 50 golfers with interest in what is happening now that the golf course is underneath city control. I can thank Councilor Lopez for as an avid golfer, a low handicap, I believe. He's fielding a lot of questions, and so under his recommendation, he said, "Can we hold a meeting so that we can kind of put all the rumors to rest, so that everybody can have a vision?" We will be at the Rec Center on February 7th at 6 p.m., I believe, yes, because it'll be dark by then. You guys should not be playing golf, I would think. But and so we'll invite the entire public, everybody from the golf course. We're hoping to shed some light on our hopes and our dreams of what's going to happen with the golf course. From that, as I had mentioned early in the conversation, I'll just reiterate, at the next council meeting, I will do a utility billing presentation, and I will try to help everybody understand all of the challenges that we've been facing, all of the challenges that we've overcome, and where we're headed for the future for that. And then finally, we have 2 holidays coming up. One will be after the next meeting, so I'll remind you of that one, but January 17th and February 21st, the city offices are closed, and so we'll still all be available by texting or calling, or email, but we will not be in the office those days. So we are already posted at City Hall for being closed on that. So Mayor, City Council, thank you for all the work tonight, and please let me know where I can help.
I have Councilor Best. Councilor, you have the floor.
Since we have so many questions on the golf, can we put that online? Since it's going to be here at the Convention Center, can we film
It'll be
that?
at the Rec Center.
Oh, at the Rec
Center. But
yes,
we can.
Because it's a constant hovering bird over us. That and the utility billing, those can all go online, so these folks
And
can
utility
go back.
billing will be here, so it's already videoed. Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. On the meeting tomorrow, I think just so everyone understands, this was originally going to be an in-person meeting at the Santa Fe Convention Center. I got notification on this, and then just, 48 hours ago or so, we were suddenly told that they weren't going to allow in-person, and it was going to go all virtual. I had a conversation with Mr. Forte of the Municipal League about this, and the Municipal League had put a lot of effort into arranging this, but we will have it online in the large conference room. I'm not sure, to be candid with you, I don't think this is going to be anywhere near as satisfactory as the in-person one would have been. And full disclosure, I had badgered Mr. Nebb about going up and being the representative because it seems this governor does not care for the chief elective officer of the city of Roswell to be in the same area as she is. It is a distinct honor in some ways. And that concludes this city council meeting. Time now is 8:32.